Stream. Stream. This show is sponsored by Talking Vids, corporate video, e-learning, enterprise-wide development, online interviews, multimedia development, and more. Visit us at www.talkingvids.com. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. I am Rick Zanotti, and this is eBizChat, where it's all about business. I am joined today by Dr. Susan Nash. How are you, Susan?
Oh, fine. It's so great to be here. And we have a great guest, Sashi Gunturu. And what's so wonderful about Sashi is that he's right at the cutting edge of like understanding how on earth that we deal with all of the massive amounts of information coming in and sensors and edge computing. And like he's behind the scenes what makes all of this possible.
Well, let's get him to the front of the scene here. How are you, Sashi?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
That's great. It's been a while since we've last seen you. And so what's changed in the world of like you said, data liberation, edge computing, and all of the work that you're doing with data collection and gathering?
Yeah, I think the big change is this whole revival of generative AI. I think it's affecting every area where the productivity of people and processes are significantly being augmented with generative AI. So everything is moving at a very, very fast pace. You see with introduction of ChatGPT. I think we are seeing a very nascent big revolution in the way the whole computing works, and with an accelerated pace with generative AI.
That's super interesting. So what exactly about generative AI changed things?
Yeah, I think it is giving you options where you can scan through massive amounts of data, and it's learning from information about these documents, whether it's documents or processes and things like that. All of those things, its ability to learn and infer and communicate in simple language, which makes it more interactive for the end user, and as well as augment the entire process. For example, if you are migrating data and if you want to map information, generative AI can really help you map the information faster, so that you can, instead of taking data migration taking like 5 months, now you can do within a couple of weeks. So it's significantly improving the productivity. And unlike a traditional machine learning approach, the generative AI is significantly changing the landscape.
Wow. Well, so we hear a lot about generative AI. We hear about ChatGPT. Who else is doing generative AI besides OpenAI and all that?
Yeah, I think if you look at the big companies like Facebook, Google, Microsoft, and all of them, and also AWS, so they are trained on massive amounts of information. What they're trying to do is make the generative AI like an everyday commodity. So that means you really don't have to know how to build a generative AI model, but rather have a very low code base, so that you can introduce things like talking to your data. You can ask your data, the enterprise data, right? So they're exposing in a very simplistic way, so that anybody within a business organization can quickly adapt and get more insights from the data. So they've made it very, very accessible and highly available over the cloud through simple API calls. So that will really accelerate your whole data insights journey.
Now, what exactly does your company do as a service with the data gathering and everything else?
Yeah, at Petrobytes, we are heavily working in the energy sector, and also we are aggressively moving into becoming more like an industrial AI company. So anything to do with scientific measurement whether it's measurement on the rig, whether it's measurement on the pipelines or at the chemical factory. All those different measurements, they are continuously being measured over a long period of time. So Petrobytes provides that middleware that can quickly analyze the data from all the way from the edge also to the cloud, and then provide meaningful insights, whether it's how to drill, how to optimize your data with respect to sensors, and how do you predict from the sensor data, all of that. So we are the middleware company for industrial AI.
That's great.
So when you say middleware, what exactly do you mean by it?
Yeah, there are so many companies that are uh, constantly creating new applications. So as the number of applications becomes bigger and bigger, it becomes very difficult for end company. Like for example, if you take a chemical company or exploration company like Shell or ExxonMobil or any other company like industrial company, they will deal with hundreds of vendors, lots of data systems, and they all need to aggregate in order to provide meaningful insights. So Petrobytes is able to connect all the dots and provide that collaborative workspace where you are taking data from sensors from multiple vendors. You're also taking data from applications from other vendors and providing that integrated hub in order to give you a holistic interpretation of the data and faster insights.
Can you pull in legacy data as well?
Yeah, I think most of the systems, like if you see, they have been there operational for a long period of time, especially with energy companies. So it's difficult for them to quickly change and adapt to newer systems. So we have adapters that can pull data from these legacy systems without any major modification. So then you're connecting the old systems with the new systems, as well as continuous streaming data. So that is what makes it that gives you the ability to provide that holistic contextual information and continuously evolving over time.
Well, it's super interesting. And I've been on a couple of recent webinars where today, for example, was all about lithium and lithium supply chain and getting into EVs and just the path to that. And then also been on some on about hydrogen. And what's interesting is that there's a new energy, which is like hydrogen, energy storage, lithium batteries, etc., and it includes also solar, etc. And then there's traditional oil and gas. And what people forget, and you even see this in certain groups, they're both in the energy industry, and they just kind of sit and stare at each other and think that it's me or them, us or them, or one or the other, when in reality, you have to have all of them. For example, even in lithium processing, you have to have gas in order to have power for the direct lithium extraction. And in hydrogen that's coming from ammonia comes from natural gas. And so but yet there are gaps where these aren't hooked up together and nothing's talking to each other. Does what you do allow all these different puzzle pieces to come together and talk to each other?
Yeah, I think there is always a big transition that has to happen. The traditional fossil fuel based economy is here to stay, but at the same time, they are becoming more and more efficient, more and more carbon neutral in their efficiencies, and also, like controlling the flaring gas and all of that. So I think the energy companies have become more efficient, and basically the traditional fossil fuels. And if you look at companies like BP, they are also in the traditional business, but they're also looking at green energy. So most of the companies are investing in newer forms of energy. Like we work with a Spanish oil company, so it was interesting because we were in a gas station where they were selling gas, but it was powered by solar panels. So I think energy companies are looking at the entire value chain, not just the traditional oil and gas, and they're making it more and more efficient. And as they become more and more efficient, they're looking at their carbon footprint. So they're continuously monitoring their emissions, they're increasing their process efficiency and things like that. So I think it's a massive change that is happening. And also the newer energy, they are learning from the traditional oil and gas, the processes, and also the scientific breakthroughs that the traditional oil and gas had, and they're now adapting in the newer forms of energy.
Now,
Oh,
are
that's
you
amazing.
use? Oops, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Now, are you using? You mentioned ChatGPT as one of them. Are you using them as one of the engines that you go through, or a different one, or are you creating your own?
Yeah, I think so. Most of these generative large language or generative AI, the large language models that are being used, they are trained on large public data
Mm-hmm.
across all industries. So they understand natural language, so that you can what they call it talking to your data. You can ask what are my sales for the next year based on my previous year, right? So which products are consuming, are people buying in terms of uh, your equipment and things like that. So you're essentially talking to the data. But these models take a lot of effort to train, and they are very expensive. So the big companies have trained these models like Facebook, Google, Nvidia is driving this whole ability to train these models. But the good thing is you can take those models and train on your own proprietary data. So that means
Mm.
if a company has its own data, so you can train on these data sets and keep that model quite in-house. So that means now you can take whether it's a logistics company or it's an energy company or a supply chain company or a healthcare company, right? So you can train on your own data and then get the same benefits as you without having to spend the millions of dollars in order to train them. So I think that is where you see what is called adapting the large language models to your
Mhm.
specific business use case and keeping the IP also with you. And that's where you see from a variety of spectrum from all industries they're using that kind of approach.
Well, and so like when you put together the middleware, you have to basically be able to work with all these different platforms. So, what are some of the platforms that you work with?
Yeah. So in a typical scenario, right, you have both structured and unstructured data. The structured data would be like traditional databases that you have that most companies have. They have cloud data warehouses. There are on-prem databases. But in terms of unstructured data, it's all kinds of information. It will be documents, process info. It will be documents from other websites, from external systems, and so on. So when we process the data, and that is where we use generative AI, where you can take all this information and contextualize that information, and then
Mhm.
quickly make the whole structured and unstructured data more coherent in order to create one unified approach for the data model. So we create that common data model with all taking data from different data sources. Once you have a standardized data model, then you can do lots of analytics. So that's what we do all the time. And previously, it was taking a lot of time to do everything manually or through a traditional code base. Now with generative AI, you can query the data. Like you can say, you take a database and say, give me all the relationships. If I delete this particular table, what happens? So it can look at all of that and give you say, okay, these are the potential impacts of your data, right? So it can quickly analyze databases, text documents, all of that, and give you that productivity increase. So that will help in creating the standardized data model, where from there you can actually build, you can accelerate the application bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I remember several years ago having a conversation with there was people were first trying to make go from unstructured documents like early photographs or scans that were not necessarily the PDFs that are readable and just the old versions of things, and they were just images, and so everything would have to go through the slow scanning or whatever, and it took forever, and it wasn't really all that good. And so now it's just sort of amazing that all of this can be done so quickly.
Yeah, and not only just like a query and response, you can build workflows as well. You can say, how do I improve the process or give me all the bottlenecks on a given process, right? Now with generative AI, you'll be able to also come up with a root cause analysis and how to actually fix a problem. It's not like a question answer response, but it can also give you much more detailed workflows on top of it. And then I think the key thing is the NVIDIA chips and also the TensorFlow, the TPUs that Google has created. So it has become, the compute has significantly enabled the AI to accelerate. So that's why you can have this multi-billion parameters that are trained on these large language models are possible because they are trained on this massive infrastructure. But these big companies are actually doing that, but they're also exposing it as APIs so that smaller companies can just adapt, train on their own data, and get that inferences much quicker, right? So not every company needs to actually build a large language model. They can leverage the existing, they call it the foundation model. So all these big companies like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and all these companies, they're creating what is called a foundation model. So you can take those foundation models, add data to it, and then add more context, and then now that model becomes yours, and then you can have that insights from these models.
Well, before we were talking about, Rick and I were talking about data liberation. And so that's a term that people think, oh, we really want to have data liberation within the organization. But what exactly does that mean? We thought maybe you could go into a lot of detail.
Yeah, I think as more and more companies are building new kinds of analytics, they want to have access to data. So in previously, like if you don't have any standards, it's logged in a specific application. So now, for example, in the energy industry, they have created what is called an open subsurface data universe. So that means if you store data or access data in a standardized way, and all applications have access to get the data in a standardized way, you're achieving two things. One is you're minimizing the application rewrite for all these applications. So whether it's application A or application B, they're all getting the data the same way. Like for example, if you're accessing a website, whether you are in India, whether in US, you have to go to the web browser and access the same way. So the format is the same. The way you access the data is the same. So that means multiple people can analyze the data in different ways and then come up with a better analysis instead of only specific companies trying to do that, right? So that means you're exposing to the data to a lot of interpretations in order to get a much more richer experience. So that is truly the data liberation. So it happened in healthcare where all the companies like the traditional practitioners, the doctors, government, and all the healthcare companies, they were all exchanging the data the standardized way. That means that saved billions of dollars. The same revolution is happening in the energy industry, where you have hundreds of vendors and energy companies all accessing the data the same way. So that means you have faster interpretation, better interpretation. So when you're also exchanging the data, you're talking the same language. The same thing is happening with the pipeline industry with pods. So I think the concept of standardizing the data, exchanging the data the standardized way, is helping multiple companies to come up with better interpretations of the same data.
It's funny. I think we're all pausing because I'm thinking of, that's some really interesting ramifications on data. Is this data being stored in relational databases, or is it a different architecture at this point?
Yeah. The AI, there's what is called a vector database because it's not sequential, it's a vector, right?
Okay.
So that means if you take, for example, a concept of visual thesaurus, right? So that means if you have a word, like for example, you say assume, right? So then I say, you can have multiple synonyms of that word, or get, you say give me and all of that. So you can have several words. So that means you have multi-dimensional information. And all of these things are stored as vector databases. And that is what is powering the whole AI. So that means every data set, because all the AI works in numbers. So everything is translated into number domain.
Mm-hmm.
That means they have a vector embedding, they call it vector embedding. That means the multi-dimensional data sets are stored in this what is called a vector database. Unlike the traditional relational database, but they also give you a similar approach of querying the data. Like typically SQL is being used to query the relational database. Same thing is happening with the vector database, where you can query the information. And because you are storing in a multidimensional vector and encoding, so that is powering ability to contextualize data in different sources. For example, if you do a vector embedding of a multiple relational database, it can look through both rows and columns and retrieve the data. So you can say, give me the sales that are more than $500,000, the specific product. So then it can look at an extreme detail in rows and columns because of this vector-based encoding and give you the retrieval information. And this is happening at a massive scale. If you look at petabytes of data being embedded.
So the data intersects everywhere, basically.
Yeah,
it could.
Yeah.
It could by design.
And it's also multi-dimensional, right? It's not just text. It could be audio, sound, image, all kinds of information. Like GPT-4 is now giving you image. Instead of just giving a text, it will also give you the image. So that means you can say, give me the sales of my competition for this specific product, or give me the best price across all the websites. So it will give you not only the price, but it will also say, in Target, I have this product. In Walmart, I'm getting this product with images. So it's pretty getting more and more powerful day by day.
That sounds pretty exciting, actually. I'm an old database guy. That's how I'm going. I can just see the ramifications of how that's built. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Well, I think with that, why don't we put an end to this show, and we'd love to have you back again and talk a little bit more about what your company's doing and how it's adapting to all this, because you've been involved in the database world for quite a while, and see how these trends are going, because again, they're pretty new, and like you said, it's moving rather quickly. So as a result, it'll be interesting if it continues to move that fast. Does it take a turn to slow it down? Does it go the other way to go even faster? It'll just be interesting to see where it goes. Plus, there's a certain cost and expense to all this. The mining of AI data is not cheap. It costs a little bit of money. I think you were mentioning in the little write-up you did that it also works with AWS, what you're doing. So in other words, the large data sources can now currently handle this kind of data, correct?
Yeah, it can handle this kind of data. And also, the AI is enabling you to write better code. So lots of things are happening when you write this new code.
Okay, that's great.
Can you hear it? Yeah. So, like it'll basically correct your code and give you more insights. Like there are these assistants, code assistants. It can actually generate code for you. You can say, how do you build a website? It will give you code for that. And how do you improve my code efficiency and all of that. So that is what is accelerating this whole journey, not just the prediction of the large language models, but those are actually helping you to write better code, faster code. So you spend more time on the logic rather than worrying about the syntax.
Yeah, that's nice. That's really nice.
Oh, that's huge.
Well, anyway, it's been a pleasure, Sashi, having you on again and talking about this and getting ourselves motivated, because it is motivating. It's kind of exciting to see how fast, and this is going so quickly. I mean, the research has been going on for years, but it's all of a sudden quick. Everybody's using the word probably badly in most cases, but AI is coming in many, many ways. It's here, but it'll generate more interestingly as we continue. So it'll be nice to see how it goes. Well, Sashi, again, thanks for coming on. Susan, as always, it's a pleasure. And if you have any questions, how can people reach you?
Yeah, you can look at our website, or you can email me at sashi@petabytes.com. We'll be happy to help in any way.
Okay, great. We'll put your link below so people can get to the website and learn more. So again, thanks for coming on the show today, and we will see you next time. And if you're interested in getting a hold of them, please take a look at the website, and it's an adventure. Enjoy it. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
opportunity. Thank you.